Hey, it's Drybear. Dune Awakening's beta starts in the morning, so we're kind of covering a lot of the developer, director responses they've done. There have been a ton of questions about the game, how it works. There's a bunch of systems that are rather convoluted and hard to describe in very simple terms just because of where they are, but we're going to continue on what we started yesterday, which is going through all of the director and official responses that people have had about the game. Burning questions of how's it going to work, how do I do this, what is that, and that sort of thing. The first question pertains to the Landsraad contested areas. So if you didn't know, in Dune Awakening, there's going to be two primary factions to follow. You can support the factions, you can betray the factions. Each faction will give your own building sets. You can make your base look like that faction as well. There's also going to be all kinds of political and trading bonuses and negatives based on the factions that you run into in general. However, there is going to be weekly changes to the environment, like the environment you're in your area will change based on the storms and things like that. There's also going to be a seasonal attempt at a kind of like PvP contention area, which is they're calling Landsraad. So Landsraad is going to be like this time period where different factions will compete for control of over the area and get tons of extra really cool benefits from that as well. However, there was a question on the official AMA with the directors on it as well, and they asked, hey, can we have a Landsraad condition that fully disables PvP for the week? And I think there's definitely, this is going to come up a lot. It came up yesterday in the Q&A as well, but a lot of people are saying like, hey, I'm a PvE only player. How do I, engage with this style of content? And the response from this was, interesting idea. No current plans right now, but something to consider. So it sounds like, which is kind of understandable, is their PvP faction war contest area Landsraad has no intentions or plans to be PvE only, but they are considering, like, it's an interesting idea and they might look at it for future. I'm sure there's going to be regions or areas that are limited for PvP so you can actually get through the area, but I think the whole point of the faction contested area is that it's supposed to be PvP. And if you're someone who's on the PvP side or the PvE side, let me know at least where your head is at on this one specifically, if you would like to be able to at least traverse those areas without wondering if you're going to get ganked or not. Which I think leads perfectly into the next question. It seems like, again, it's one that people are very concerned about pre-launch. Are there any measures, gameplay mechanics that will prevent bigger clans snowballing compared to the smaller clans or guilds? So basically, are there safeguards in place to prevent large, well-coordinated guilds from just completely and utterly dominating the Landsraad or the Spice Wars or any of the dungeons or areas on the map as well? What is preventing them from just zerging and just dominating everything? And the response from Joel, the chief creative director, is, we have some specific features in place that will make zergs have a harder time. Friendly fire will be on for guilds, so if you're in a guild raid and you're going in for the Spice War or the Landsraad, you will accidentally kill your teammates if you're not careful, which does kind of discourage zerging. There's also no name tags, so you may not know who you're shooting at. The issue of large groups dominating in multiplayer games is a difficult problem to solve entirely. So they have some mechanics in there, nothing that I've heard that would prevent people from being extremely, like, coordinated and actually just completely monopolize some areas, but I guess we'll have to see. More on the PvP areas as well. There's a question on, how does base raiding work? Like, can I just go up to anyone's base and destroy it if I want to? The shields for the base that protect you from the dangers of the desert, can I attack only during a storm? What if there's no storms? Like, how does the base raiding work? Is this going to be like Rust? Is it going to be like Conan Exiles? Like, what's going on here? And the response from Viljar was, players can't damage base shields, which means if there's a shield on the base, you can't damage the base shield. But the shields will go down in during a sandstorm. Everything in the dunes gets reset every week, even bases in the PvE area. So you might have to look for an opportunity for someone who isn't maintaining their base shields properly or isn't keeping up with it properly, and then you would get an opportunity to attack it. But there's not, like, at least in this question, a lot lot more description on, can we fully destroy it, and what happens if it gets destroyed, what happens if my base has no shields up after a storm, and a guild raids it and you know, burns it to the ground, what happens there. Next question is around the land claims, like specifically. We answered this yesterday in the Q&A. People were asking like, hey, are the land claims and bases going to be guild restricted or player restricted? And the answer from yesterday was yes, they will be player restricted, which means that even if you have a large guild or a small guild, it doesn't matter. Every player gets to have their own base and their own land claim and plot, so you'll be able to have that as well, though you will have to pay taxes. Keep that in mind. So the question was like, you know, is there anything preventing guilds from just claiming everything and completely shutting everything down? And are you limited to one character per world? Can you visit a friend server siege when you decide to? That sort of thing. The response was, you are limited to one character, one world per account. We aim to be able to visit a different server even without having a friend there for launch even. And they did mention this yesterday. They do plan to be able to visit a friend's base even if they're offline for launch. They feel like they're going to have that feature online. So as long as you want to visit a friend, you certainly can. And they even have marketplaces being global. We answered this yesterday as well, where if you put something on sale on your friend's siege instead of yours, your layer, you will still be able to collect the rewards from that sale on the marketplace as well, so that sort of thing. So this is kind of like a big revelation for some people as well, is the land plots and land claims are player restricted, which means everyone gets their own base regardless of the size of the guild that they're in. On top of that, they will be restricting each account to one character, one world. So you won't be able to, you know, have a guild that has multiple characters across multiple worlds. You're going to have to pick a world. They will release a world list of all the servers coming for launch, so keep that in mind, but it's kind of like a revelation on how they're going to do this going forward. Next was a question around the deep desert and more concerns around just griefing and people being doo-doos in this case, but it was a great question and one that I actually hadn't even thought of. So the deep desert is like your big open area that changes constantly, and there's resources to explore and mark, and there's even going to be like, they're going to be like you know, trade skills or like professions for people that go out into the deep desert to collect that week's resources. And then when the week rolls over, the environment's going to change, everything's going to, you know, the overall topography is going to roll and change and that sort of thing. But the deep desert is going to be a big area of contention. There's going to be professions for people that go into the deep desert to collect difficult or dangerous resources. There's also, they mentioned, going to be kind of like a cartographer role. There is actually a cartographer class, like a planetariist, planetist, whatever. They're going to have a class specifically for mapping the land when it changes and creating maps that people can follow. And you can actually, as a cartographer, you can go out into the deep desert after it changes from a storm, and you can remap everything, survey, use drones, find out where all the new resources are, and then you can actually go to the trading post and sell that map without going to, you know, without having to risk yourself in the combat or fighting NPCs or bandits or whatever. You can just map everything and then sell the map information to big guilds and say, hey, I found where everything is this week, pay me for it, that sort of thing. So there was a great question here that was asked around that front of like, if the deep desert is going to be our big contested area that everyone explores and fights over, what about the entrance, right? Because when we're trying to get into the deep desert, as we know in PvP games, there's, especially in big guild-based PvP games, what's preventing a large dominant guild from just camping the entrance? Just going to the entrance to the deep desert, setting up a whole bunch of people, and then anyone that comes through just gets instantly ganked, and they have a monopoly over the deep desert, which is a great question. And the response from Viljar was the entrances to the deep desert are in PvE areas, which means that getting into the deep desert has no contested PvP area, which you can't, going into the deep desert, you won't get ganked. It's only once you actually venture out into the deep desert that becomes available. And they also make it so you can't build in the entrance areas to the deep desert either. So no one can get a land plot there. No one can build a base and put all their vehicles there. You can't get ganked. It's all locked in there. So a great question, one that I hadn't even thought of, but it looks like they have some protections in place for some griefing for PvP in the deep desert area. The next question is related to what I just mentioned, which is the planetologist class and just the general idea of gathering intel and scouting. They've mentioned this quite a lot, that with shifting environments, the sand washing things over, the storms rewriting the topography and things like that, like, you know, how is scouting going to apply to the game and how will this work? And so the question was, like, you know, how much of the game is going to be scouting and how much will people want to use classes like the planetologist, which focuses on that sort of thing, so on and so forth. And Joel, the creative director, responded with, we don't have name tags when you're out in the desert, so you won't be easily visible, which means there's no UI element that shows your character. There's no outline. Your name isn't showing or anything like that. So you can actually use true camouflage. If you wanted to match your environment with your outfit or your still suit or whatever it is you're showing, you can actually hide in plain sight because there are no UI elements making that game world feel a little bit more crisp for people to spot you. So you won't have name tags. You won't be easily visible. And you can also change up both your gear as well as the colors or the swatch patterns on your gears to better camouflage as well, to be more or less visible against the environment if you choose to. They also expect that scouting will be a large part of the game, but of course, no plan survives first contact with players. The goal was to create a role for people who love exploring and reinforce that role with the deep desert resets and the infinite exploration pillar of the game. You craft sync charts from the map screen once you have learned the ability. You need blank sync charts in order to craft new ones, and again, planetologists and that kind of playstyle can go out and, like you see on screen, they can actually just go out and like map the area, discover what's changed, and then use that information and sell it on the trading post if they want to be a scouter or an information broker. Next, someone asked about the character creator. They did release a character creator a couple of weeks ago that people could play around with, and there's also been a closed beta that a limited number of people have access to be able to try out the character creator. And people have asked, like, hey, are you going to add more to it? Like, it seems like it's missing some options or some customization tools that I would like to use. And the response to this question was, we have expanded the options for the character creator since that creator was released. We will continue to expand it post-launch as well. So change your appearance will be a post-launch update. So if you created your character, there's going to be more options than the last time they showed that feature off as a demo option. And they plan to have the ability to be able to change your character's appearance post-launch as well if you'd like to. Next is a question about base size. We've already kind of covered that the bases will be limited by player. Like, every player gets their own base. Doesn't matter if, like, there's no like restrictions or amount of tiles or whatever or pieces for a guild. It's by player. And so someone had asked, hey, if I'm a solo player, can I have a really big base? Like, I know I'm gonna have to pay taxes on my base and my plot, and I'm gonna have to kind of like support it and protect it and refuel it. But is it possible for a solo player to have a respectable base, a large base by myself? And the answer is yes. You will be able to build big bases as a solo player. They expect that a solo player will be able to make enough money to pay the taxes for an extremely large base, assuming they got a plot that supports it. A lot of players in the closed beta are building upward, so like they'll find like a pillar to build on or a cliffside, and they'll build that way. And they're, you know, based on the director's response here, that you would be able to have a very large base with tons of like vehicle bays and crafting stations and, you know, protections against the elements, things like that. And you will be able to make enough money as a solo player to pay the taxes for a very large base if you so choose. Next is a great question around region lock. So we know we have their crazy convoluted world siege region server switching, joining other sieges and guild stuff system. But there was a question of like, is there region lock? Like, if I wanted to go, like, say I'm, you know, like I actually have friends like this. Like, say you live in, I don't know, you live in Ireland and your online gaming crew all lives in like South America or something like that, and you'd like to play on a server with them, even though it means you're gonna get a difference in paying, that sort of thing. So is there a region lock? Am I gonna be locked to one region versus not? And the response to the director was, there is no region lock. You can play any region you want, and you can also have, as we mentioned earlier, one character per world. So if you wanted to have your primary world that you play on, and you have your character there, if you wanted to go to a different region and a different world and make another character there, you can. So you can actually just just like move to different areas and play between those as well. So if you have, you have a friend that lives in Europe and you live in Australia, or you live in, I don't know, Korea or something like that, you'll be able to play that way with them. And you can even have a character per world if you wanted to have multiple different friend groups or regions. Next, the directors were asked, like, what is your vision for the game and what do you expect it to be long term? And honestly, there's been kind of like a lot of questions around how this game setup and architecture can work in the long term. And also, like, with this super fragmented server system, what happens if, 6 months from now, like, certain sietches or certain worlds have lower population and then there's no competition in some of the contested areas, that sort of thing. Like, what is the long-term plan for this? And I think a lot of these people asking these questions are probably like Conan Exiles players that are just like, what are you guys going to do with this game going forward? So just to kind of touch on that topic here, the director says the game is designed as a persistent online experience where people can live and take part in the politics of the Imperium, but it's complicated. And we know that yesterday, or at least like over the last couple of weeks, they've kind of backed off of the MMO title and just showing that it's like a large multiplayer experience, because I mean, because it's so fragmented, because of the layering and the sietching and stuff like that, it probably isn't going to feel very MMO like in that case, because everything's so separated out. So they do see it as a persistent online experience, in their words. Continuing, he says the game has a fair chunk of launch content, and the end game systems like the Landsraad contested area or the Deep Desert contested area, as we mentioned, are designed around the idea of the player activity cycles. If you commit to them, there is always something to be done. The Deep Desert also changes layout each week, and it is our attempt to create this pillar of infinite exploration as you play the game. But there's also a finite level of content outside of those systems. We know there's going to be quests, there's going to be like faction quests and like faction rep that you can build up. There's going to be a campaign, like a story that you'll kind of go through as well. And there are a finite number of quests, dungeons, and crafting recipes, which they plan to add into over time. The story mission runs through the game, and at a certain point it ends. Finishing, more of these finite elements will be added as the game matures, as well as new features that will arrive with those updates. My personal plan runs for years, and as people who played Conan Exiles can attest, we committed to adding a lot to the game over time. They've also, like, since their closed beta showing and some of their dev streams, they've already added a whole bunch of new modules, crafting options, building options, and tile sets. They added a whole new tile set, like for your base, that they put into the pre-order bonuses, as well as there will be Twitch drops on launch as well. There will be more things you can add to your base overall. So they do plan to continue adding to that, and then they will look at multiple layers like the contested zones, Landsraad Deep Desert, the basin, which is going to be more of like a hub for people, as well as the limited PvE content for quest lines, characters, faction development, and so on. Next, there was a question on if there's any restrictions with the stuff we find out in the contested areas, right? Like there's a concern that, like, are there things that we simply just can't bring back with us if we're exploring out in the Deep Desert, or we find something in the Landsraad? Like, is there anything that we can't bring back to our base or to the trading post? And they confirm that you can bring back anything that you find out in the dungeons, out in the special encounters, the Spice Wars, Landsraad, or the Deep Desert. The only restriction is what you can carry. So if you find something cool, you can bring it back with you and store it in your base, or trade it on the marketplace if you so choose. Next is probably the most burning question that a lot of people have had about the game. I've heard this over and over. People have looked at some of the trailers or the gameplay reveals, and they've looked at the combat, and they said that the combat, at least in their perspective, just doesn't feel like it's up to snuff. So during the Q&A, they asked, like, hey, combat and shooting looks kind of rough. Any plans to make it better for launch or for post-launch? Like, how do we feel about the state of combat in Dune Awakening? And the response from the director was, you should play it first. There is a clear difference between the feedback we receive from people who have played it and the people who have watched someone else play it. So they're saying, hey, you got to feel it for yourself. Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is based on what you've seen. And please set expectations according to the genre. We're doing a lot more features than shooter or melee focused games, survival aspects, exploration, base building, that sort of thing. And we're not trying to compete with those games in their quality of like just pure gunplay. Our aim was to be top class in the survival genre, and we feel we are well on the way to achieving that for Dune Awakening. We will continue updating the systems as we update the game post-launch, so stay stay tuned. And I'll leave it there today for the Q&A. Tomorrow morning will be the launch of their beta weekend, and there will be keys that will be giving out all weekend on their stream and stuff like that as well. And you might get one if you're lucky enough through their normal sign-up process or their request access process on Steam. But let me know what you think about the questions and answers today from the devs themselves, and what you think about the game going into the beta weekend down below in the comments.
If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.